So if I made an exact copy of my brain, either in the biochemical sense or in a digital sense, like the brain whole brain emulation or mind uploading, if that copy regarded as something equivalent to my self-consciousness? This is a really interesting question, and some people appear to assume that the answer is yes, because some people argue that if we make an exact copy of ourselves, either as a simulation, that's a whole brain emulation for you, or taking out data from the brain and uploading it somewhere. Some people claim that that is actually a continuation of ourself, and maybe we can destroy the original. Uh, Actually, a researcher from MIT, he suggested that we cut up the brain and digitize it and upload all the data information into a machine. Then we would have eternal self. So that seems to be the assumption that some researchers have assumed, and I strongly disagree with it for the following reason. Okay, suppose we have an exact copy of me, somewhere, somehow, either biochemically or in the digitized form. Is the fact that, and assume that this is a really jump of faith. Assume that there is some consciousness associated with it. Well, if we make a biochemical copy of oneself, then maybe we can assume, beyond any reasonable doubt, that it would be some self-consciousness there. But if we assume that we only do some simulations in the computer, then it's a jump of faith for me, because simulation, you don't know the epistemological foundations of simulation. Simulation is based on mapping, and mapping is suspect when it comes to questions of consciousness. So anyway, but anyway, we suppose that we have an exact copy of me, and and there's some consciousness associated with that copy. Does it mean that we have two self-conscious me? I don't think so, because suppose okay, there's a copy of myself beyond the curtain, and which I can see, and somebody tells us, hey, Ken, we actually have made an exact copy of you, and it's lurking behind the curtain, and so we have a duplicate actually you, and so can we destroy you, because we can make the copy of you very happy, and from the money we get from destroying you, because it's a first scientific experiment, and we'll get a lot of grant money and also a lot of donations. So we'll give 80% of it to your copy. So even if you are destroyed, your copy will thrive and live a happy life. And would I agree to that kind of proposition? Of course not. Of course not. Because if you think the essential nature of self-consciousness, it would appear that it doesn't really matter whether there's a copy of you or not. Well, even if you make a copy of you, it would rapidly dissociate from your own good self, because experiences will be different, and the brain would be modified in some different ways. So when days pass, you and your copy would be different, and so the copy statement can be applied to a moment. I mean, when an exact copy of you is made, maybe at that moment you can say that you have an exact copy of you. But as time passes, that there will be a increasing dissociation between you and your copy. So it doesn't really make sense to say that your copy will be happier, because it is different from your original self. So, but if you disregard that and start from the assumption that you can actually make an exact copy of you, even then it is not sensible to say that that exact copy of you has something equivalent to your self-consciousness. Because it doesn't really matter whether a copy of you exists or not. Your self-consciousness is, in a sense, absolute. And, the sameness, identity, or similarity in information contents, so to speak, in your brain has nothing to do with the essence of your self-consciousness. We can even argue that, the relationship between your own self-consciousness and the consciousness of your copy is not fundamentally different from the relationship between your own self-consciousness and the consciousness of some brain which has nothing to do with you, some total stranger, maybe a people with your different gender, different cultural background, different language, because actually the identity, the unique identity of self-consciousness does not depend on the detailed information that is stored in the brain at that time. When you think about it, you believe that your self-consciousness has been identical ever since your childhood, ever since you became aware of yourself and your environment at age 2 or 3, and ever since then you would feel that you have been yourself, except for the breaks when you were asleep or you were unconscious otherwise, and even with these breaks you'd feel that you have the continuation of self before and after the break, and you would be the same you, uh, you know ever since your childhood, right? But the information in your brain has changed dramatically. You're a totally different person from your infancy. Although there are, of course, some continuity of memory. Although these memories can sometimes be misled and even falsified, but disregarding that, you would feel that your your good self, your self-consciousness has been always there. But but it doesn't actually, this continuation of yourself does not depend on the identity or similarity of information that is stored in your brain. It doesn't really matter. So it doesn't really matter whether they can reproduce your information and make an exact copy of you. It doesn't really matter for your self-consciousness whether the information content of the other brain is the same or similar to your own brain. So the similarity or identity of the information does not vouchsafe or guarantee the identity of self-consciousness. It does not have anything to do with the essence of self-consciousness. So this whole idea of making a copy of you, or this idea of whole brain emulation or mind uploading as a way to give another construct of your self-consciousness, or to give a continuation of yourself in the digital world, and to give it, if you may, an eternal life, appears to me absurd. This is an absurd idea into which many technologists and scientists have fallen. And I'm always bewildered why they are so naive. The essence of our sense of consciousness has nothing to do with the similarity or identity of information. It's in this self-contained, self-referential loop that you call self-consciousness. And it is independent of the exact information content that your brain might have at any given time. You are you, no matter what kind of experience might come your way, no matter how changed you might be in 5 years from now, for example. Even if you have a totally different worldview in 5 years, it will be the same you. So this idea of copying the synaptic connections, the information within your brain to make another digital version of your self-consciousness is absurd, because it doesn't really matter whether the information is similar or the same. What matters is that there's this physical presence of your brain, and through processes we don't understand yet, there will be a self-referential loop, metacognition, and all these things, and somehow magically your self-consciousness arise, and that is all there is to it. And it doesn't really help to think that probably you can make a copy of your brain in terms of information processing, and through some dubious mathematical concepts such as mapping. You can map anything from my brain to any state in the world. Like you can map from my brain to that state of digital circuits in the computer. That mapping is a very abstract idea. Whereas this self-consciousness is here, and you have your qualia, you have your intentionality, you have your agency, and that is very, tangible natural phenomenon. Whereas this whole mapping idea of equivalence of information and similarity of information from a state to another is only illusory. I mean, it's only useful technological or analytical tool that you can employ in some scientific arguments, but that has nothing to do with the essence of self-consciousness.